the early years of World War II, American pilots had one simple rule: never dogfight a Zero. Break that rule, and there was a good chance you wouldn't come home. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, one aircraft quickly established itself as the most feared carrier-based fighter in the Pacific. It wasn't a bomber, it wasn't a battleship. It was the sleek, lightweight Mitsubishi A6M Zero. The Zero outclimbed many early Allied fighters, turned tighter than almost anything else in the sky, and seemed nearly impossible to defeat in a traditional dogfight. Across the Pacific, it helped Japan establish air superiority during the opening phase of the war, forcing Allied pilots to completely rethink how they fought. The Zero earned its reputation honestly. Designed by Japanese engineer Jiro Horikoshi, it was built around one simple philosophy: maximum performance with minimum weight. Every unnecessary pound was removed. Its exceptional range allowed it to escort bombers across vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean, giving Japan a major operational advantage during the early years of the war. It could maneuver with astonishing precision, making experienced Japanese pilots even more dangerous. During the first year of the Pacific War, Allied pilots often found themselves badly outmatched. From the Philippines to the Dutch East Indies, the Coral Sea, and the early Solomon Islands campaign, the Zero established air superiority in many major engagements. Many believed Japan had built the perfect fighter, but there was one problem: perfection came at a cost. To make the Zero so light and agile, Japanese engineers sacrificed protection. The aircraft carried very little armor around the cockpit. Its fuel tanks lacked effective self-sealing technology, making them highly vulnerable to gunfire. A single burst of heavy machine gun fire could set the aircraft ablaze. The Zero was devastating when everything went right, but once it was hit, it often couldn't survive the damage. American intelligence officers carefully collected every piece of information they could find. Pilots who survived combat described exactly how the Zero fought. Captured documents, combat reports, and several recovered Zero aircraft, including the famous Akutan Zero, recovered in 1942, were carefully analyzed. Every report revealed another clue. Gradually, American engineers realized they had been asking the wrong question. Instead of building a fighter that could copy the Zero, they needed a fighter that could beat it. That fighter became the Grumman F6F Hellcat. Grumman engineers designed the Hellcat around the hard lessons learned during the brutal fighting of 1942. Unlike the Zero, the Hellcat wasn't built to be the lightest fighter in the sky. It was built to survive. Powered by the 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, the Hellcat combined excellent speed, a strong rate of climb, outstanding dive performance, and exceptional durability. Armor protected the pilot. Self-sealing fuel tanks dramatically improved survivability. 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns delivered overwhelming firepower. The Hellcat was heavier than the Zero. It wasn't designed to outturn the Zero. It was designed to outfight it. American pilots also changed the way they fought. Instead of engaging in slow-turning dogfights, they attacked from altitude using speed and surprise. They dove from above, fired devastating bursts, and climbed away before the Zero could react. Teamwork became just as important as flying skill. Pilots covered each other, shared information over the radio, and refused to fight on Japanese terms. The combination of superior tactics and a purpose-built aircraft began shifting the balance of power across the Pacific. By late 1943, the Hellcat was entering service aboard U.S. Navy aircraft carriers in large numbers. Wherever it appeared, the Zero faced an opponent unlike any it had encountered before. Japanese pilots still possessed tremendous courage and experience, but they were increasingly flying against an aircraft that could absorb punishment, deliver devastating firepower, and exploit every weakness of the Zero's design. The true test came in June 1944 during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Japan launched hundreds of carrier-based aircraft in one last attempt to stop the advancing American fleet. It became one of the largest carrier battles in history. American radar detected the incoming attacks long before the Japanese aircraft arrived. Hellcat squadrons launched from U.S. carriers and intercepted wave after wave of enemy fighters and bombers. The result was devastating. Japan lost hundreds of carrier-based aircraft and many of its remaining experienced naval aviators, while American losses were comparatively light. The defeat crippled Japan's carrier aviation for the remainder of the war. American pilots later nicknamed the battle the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot because of the overwhelming number of Japanese aircraft destroyed. The losses went far beyond airplanes. Japan's naval aviation never fully recovered, while the United States continued producing new aircraft and training thousands of new pilots. Japan struggled to replace the experienced aviators and aircraft it had lost. By the final year of the war, the Hellcat had become one of the most successful naval fighters ever built. It was officially credited with destroying 5,163 enemy aircraft and achieved an air combat victory-to-loss ratio of approximately 19-1, one of the highest of any fighter aircraft during the Second World War. The story of the Hellcat is not simply about one airplane defeating another. It is the story of adaptation. Japan built the Zero to dominate the early years of the Pacific War. America studied every defeat, learned every lesson, and built an aircraft designed not to imitate its enemy, but to defeat it. The Zero ruled the Pacific through speed and agility. The Hellcat helped the Allies win it back through superior tactics, overwhelming firepower, and rugged design. It didn't just defeat Japan's greatest fighter, it helped change the course of the Pacific War.